And hello, everybody. Welcome to the iPhoneography podcast. Yeah, this is a different time. We're going to be doing the show earlier. Uh, Going forward, it's going to be at 7:30 Eastern on the Monday nights that we record. Tonight, and we just came up with this whole thing probably about an hour and a half ago. So we're just doing 8 o'clock tonight Eastern, and then and this is for the live people that want to watch us live on YouTube, and uh, going forward it'll be 7:30 Eastern. That way, it's Dwight has his evenings free. Dave and I don't have to stay up so late, and I think it's really going to work out great. So. Um, if you're watching us live, it might even be a little better for, folks who are a few hours behind us, maybe even in the UK. If you stay up late enough, you can check it out. But anyway, so that's what we're doing. And now I'm going to bring in both these guys. Hey, Dwight. Hey, Dave. How's it going?
Hey guys.
Hey, Greg.
So
Centered here.
might as well talk about the weather like we always do. It was a beautiful day here today, mild. Um, it was enough that it got me up on the roof to get some snow off the edge of the roof and that. And uh, I know some folks have no idea why I'm talking about it, but I mean, this winter, okay, spoiler alert, you're going to see how bad this winter is when you see our recent photos. That's all I'll say about that. But no, I had to get up and deal with some ice around the roof and things like that. It's just a Canadian thing. And um, but you guys, like Dwight, you've been enjoying some really warm weather.
Yeah, I think it was probably 75 today, Fahrenheit,
Oh,
and I
stop
was
it.
working, so I didn't really get a chance to enjoy it. I wanted to try to go for a walk today with my wife, and she said it was too warm. So
Oh,
I guess we're okay today.
yeah. And Dave, you had a run on the weekend?
Yeah. On Saturday, I had a 10-mile race, and it was cold.
Yeah.
We were in the mid 50s today, but on Saturday it was mid 20s Fahrenheit with the wind chill in the
Ooh,
teens.
that's chilly.
Yeah, it was sunny. It was a beautiful day, beautiful sunny
Mhm.
day, but cold.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so, well, okay, so in tonight's show, okay, first we're going to do a little housekeeping. Last on the last episode, we talked about Camera Plus and what was happening there, and just like the last time this happened, which was about a year, maybe 2 years ago, where they, you know, put an update out, and the uh, paywall popped up and wouldn't let you do anything. You couldn't um, restore your purchases, all that stuff. Well, the same thing happened again last month or whatever it was. And, I don't know if it was enough negative reviews in the App Store all of a sudden or what, but now they've dropped the paywall thing for people who have had a, who people who have purchased everything in the past. So I tried it. Last show I said I was going to delete it. Well, I ended up forgetting about it and it was still on my phone. And then when I heard that this was okay again, I tried it. Still not going to use Camera Plus, but at least that issue has been resolved to some extent. I don't know what their deal is, but um, Shane Moston, and I'll put a link in the show notes to his latest video. He did a video about App Store pricing and subscriptions and all that stuff. So it's a pretty good video. And if you ever wonder about how these things work sometimes and why they are the way they are type of thing, he explains it a little bit. So check out that. I'll put that in the show notes. Uh, the other thing I want to talk about is a thing called VoiceCast. Uh, Dave, you brought this to my attention, and I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is nice. It was actually something I heard about on the Morning Stream podcast with Scott Johnson and Brian Ibbett. And one person kind of wrote in and said, by the way, your voicemail sound like something out of a 1980s or, like a 1990s flip phone. Because he was using like a Google Voice or something like that to record and play. And it sounded bad. Was not high quality. And the guy said, well, here's a service. It's a free service, and here it is here. And they said, "Oh, okay, I'll sign up," and it worked great for them. I'm like, well, that's, that could be great for any small podcaster or anything else that you need to have a recording and people leaving messages for you. So I suggested it to Greg, and I mean, it's really easy to set up. It really is. And I've tested it on their way to leave a message. And you can do it on a computer, do it on mobile. However, it's very easy to leave a message too. And you don't need to have an account to leave a message. So this is not like, you have to like leaving a message on Facebook or somewhere else where you have to create a log. You don't even have to do that. And it can be completely anonymous.
Yeah, yeah, and all you got to do is click on the link in the show notes. It says Voicecast, and we want to hear from people. I would love to do a feedback episode where you know people call in, and you can email us too. I mean, you don't have to use this if you don't want to, but we really do like to hear what people have to say. And sometimes it's easier just to blurt it out, verbally than it is to try to write things down. But so yeah, so hit the link in the show notes if you want to leave us a message, and if you have a message specifically for Dave, Dwight, or myself, just say, hey, so and so, this is what I want to say. Um, and we're more than welcome to have anybody comment on anything. Uh, hey, Ray Bazinski's in the chat room. But yeah, give us a call. Tell us what you want to say. If you have an idea for a show, if you have comments on things about the show that you've just heard or you just watched, let us know. We're more than happy to hear about this stuff. So I think it's a pretty cool idea. So now, and who else? Oh, that's Dwight. Okay, never mind. I'm looking at the chat here, and I'm seeing something new pop up. So we're going to talk tonight about happy accidents, and this is when you've taken your phone out and you open it up and you look in your camera roll and you found a picture in there that you didn't even know you took. You could have been walking along, with your camera app open, ready to take a picture, and not even realize you maybe accidentally pressed the volume up button or something like that, and it actually took a shot while you were walking along and didn't realize it. I've done that. Dave's done that. I think Dwight's probably done that. And so we thought we'll talk about tonight about what you could do with these pictures once you find them. Dwight, what do you've done this? What kind of stuff have you come up with?
I I took some time earlier today to write down 10 examples. I forced myself to kind of think about 10 examples relative to this. And yeah, it does happen. You'll see later that I was framing up on a scene and a bird flew into the scene, which was, a nice, happy accident. Sometimes you can overexpose a photo. You can crank up the exposure too much, but instead of being washed out, you might get a dreamy glow or something like that. Or, you may move your camera and there might be some blur, and you might look at it and say, hey, this works. Um, you know, uh, Random photo bombers, in your photos. Sometimes those are kind of funny, and sometimes they work for the scene. You know, Weird reflections, accidental tilt on the horizon. Sometimes that works. I'm a big believer that the horizon should be level in my photos. Especially on landscapes. But sometimes that tilt, at a 45 just makes it different. And if you're shooting into the sun, there's the lens flare. And I'm not talking about the green dot we all see on the iPhone, but you get a nice lens flare at times that it just works. Um, you might misfocus on something and it works, and uh, there's just all kinds of things that happen. And as I take photos and I go through and I kind of go through a process of elimination on which ones I want to edit and which ones I'm just going to throw away. a lot of the times the ones that I decide I'm going to edit are the ones that are happy surprises. And the same thing with my artwork that I do. All of them are happy, mistakes or surprises that I've done. So yeah, there's all kinds of ways that this can happen.
Yeah. And Dave, you've obviously you've captured the odd happy accident now and again.
Oh yeah, yeah, and a lot of it is, and I'm also thinking not only happy accident, like a true accident, but just kind of coming across a scene when you're not planning on taking a photo. Because there are a lot of times where you're like, well, I'm going to this location, or
And
I'm
you
go-
had that not too long ago, didn't you? On our recent photos.
I actually, believe it or not, a lot of my photos on the recent photos are ones that were completely unplanned. In fact,
Yeah.
I would say most of the photos I take are unplanned photos, including the one example I have, and one of the recent photos for this week was actually both of them were kind of completely unplanned. They were just kind of happenstance. Yeah, exactly, Gary saying sometimes accidents become your best images, and it's a lot of times because, at least for me, a lot of times it's something that just catches and grabs on to me, and it's something that I would not think about doing. If I was planning out going somewhere and taking a shot, it would be some. I wouldn't think, oh, I'm going to go here and I want to look for this time and I want to get this angle, and it's just something that you just happen to go. You're walking by and you're like, oh, I never saw that before. I never thought of that, or that the way this is looking right now, this looks like a great photo. It's just the kind of steal phrase from Bob Ross. It's a happy little accident.
Yeah.
There's never mistakes. There's happy little accidents.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Greg, when I'm doing my intentional camera movement stuff for my art, just like a blurry photo or a light trail photo, those are all happy accidents, and they're really fun to look at
Yeah.
and
I believe
use.
that wholeheartedly. Um, trying to do ICM. Uh,
It's intentional camera movement for people that
yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And and it's difficult at best, I think, to get what you really, really want. If you have a vision of something that you want to achieve with this process, sometimes it's hard to get that. And then in your in your efforts, you're going to try a number of times. At least I do, and I try a number of times to get what I want, and then something happens that you don't realize and you didn't plan on it, and bang, like Gary said, sometimes what did he say? Sometimes accidents become your best images. So I mean, yeah, it's very easy. It's hard to get what you want, but it's easy to get something that you like. So we're going to look at a couple of images here that we've done. Dwight, wait till I get screen sharing going. Dwight, we're going to start with yours. And just to preface this, Dwight's going to show, the process of how he got this after, at the end of the video here. So it won't be on the audio part, but if you're watching live, just hang out for that. If you're watching this after the fact, or if you're listening to the audio, check out the YouTube video. It's at the end where Dwight's going to talk about the different steps. I think where you got to this. So let me get this up here, and there you can see that.
Yeah. So that for me is like picking up a guitar and riffing. I just pick elements, I put them together, and then I play with it. The textures and the different tones, and uh, add birds and uh, fog along the bank, and when I'm happy, I'm done, and it's a happy accident. I didn't have a plan. That's just I'm doing a riff right there, and
Yeah.
and later on I'll walk kind of through the steps that I took to get here. Sure.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is predominantly just photos all mixed together, is it?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. So I guess the bulk of your this part of the discussion for you is going to come later when you kind of talk about the different steps to get there. But so with that being said, uh, Dave, we'll talk about this. I thought this was pretty cool.
There we go. Thanks. And this was a kind of I would say, dual accident, if you will. And longtime listeners of the podcast probably will know what I'm going to say next. This was taken on a run. And this is actually a park around half mile away from my house. That has a nice little place where I can sit and catch my breath. And it was at night. It was getting near evening. Actually, no. Let me correct that. It was in the morning, because that's facing east. Sorry about that. This is in the morning, and it was just the way the sun was just there. Like I said, would I have thought to walk by this pavilion and take a photo at this time? No. But it was just a happenstance. It was a good time there. And like Dwight said about the, now I did do some editing to get rid of the iPhone green dot. But yeah, basically the sun flare, it wasn't really that pronounced per se if you look at it with your eye. But with editing and kind of changing things around a bit, you can actually see that ring going on and the sunburst. And so that was all kind of, happy accident. The whole thing was kind of a happy accident because I saw what it looked like when I took the picture, and or when I took it the first time and I looked down my phone. Of course, this is something else that can cause happy accidents. Generally, when I run, I don't have my glasses on, so I can see fine-ish. I'm not going to. I don't need to read when I'm out running or walking, generally. So, but everything's a little blurry. I don't have crisp clear. So, I get it's like, okay, that's kind of what I want to see. Take the photo. And then when I get home, and I look at it and have time to look at it, it's like, oh, that was this, or this is this, or that didn't pick up. And then doing the editing. And I think kind of like with Dwight, where it's kind of like a jazz riff. A lot of times you start the editing and you may have a thought kind of you're going in this direction. And as you're doing the editing, you think, oh, this came out. Or, when you first do a photo, you may like a photo like this, you're like, well, maybe I want to get rid of the fog and the haze and make it clear. And then you start playing with it, like, oh, I like the way the light rays are actually hitting the fog. Let me keep that in because other than the direction I was going.
Yeah.
And this one was, I boosted the color a little unnaturally. But to me, it gets just I like the pop of the colors.
Yeah, I'm a big sucker for sun rays like that.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you have to use software or like an app or something to get that. But boy, oh boy, it was a nice happy accident that it just
Yeah.
happened to just do that. And you had no idea it was going to happen, obviously, right? I
No.
mean, you
No,
know,
not at all. And I mean, and this is one thing is like, and this is, I like running just for running, but I also like running outside because you come across things like this.
yeah,
Even if I go like this is a way I go. I don't want to call it a path because it's all city streets, but I go a particular path to get a certain distance out, and I've done this probably hundreds of times over the last 6 years. But this was, and I'm just checking now. This is early October at 8 in the morning. I'm going to
mm,
have a different scene early October versus if I did it now, where there's no leaves, and there's no stock there that someone put up for the fall. And if I do it in the summer or if I do it in the afternoon, different times you have different settings and everything, and just happening across it by going out and just experiencing what's out there.
yeah, yeah. You know, and a lot of times people take multiple pictures at the same place. I know I have, and sometimes the one that you choose to maybe do an edit on or uh, post on social isn't it won't be a happy accident because that's the one you intentionally wanted to get. But sometimes if you look back through them, a slightly different angle or you know different composition might just be a better shot. Again, going back to what Gary said, uh, and that's considered a happy accident, I guess you could say, because it's not what you intended to get, but um, it's definitely a good shot. And a little discussion on the weather going on here. I'm ready for some 75 degrees. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I'll take 55 degrees or 13 degrees for me. Yeah, yeah. It was uh, Ray. It was, I would say, low 40s Fahrenheit for me today. So it was the warmest day we've had in a long time. Um, and it's supposed to be probably close to that tomorrow. Maybe not quite as warm, but yeah, it was nice to see the sun today. I couldn't figure out what that big white ball was in the sky, but anyway, yeah. So that's a great happy accident with the rays and all that stuff, and even that circle is really cool, and it's
Yeah.
just 100% positioning of the camera in relation to the sun and the post and this corn stalk and I think and the trees. It all kind of works together to get where that is. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Greg, I've found since I've been doing my artwork too that I can take any images that I want and put them down, and I can always figure something out. I don't
Yeah.
I don't really ever go back and say, you know what, this isn't going to work. I can figure out the composition, and so for on the art side, everything is a happy accident. You know, nothing's planned.
Yeah. And I don't do that kind of thing, and I keep saying I want to try that kind of thing, that this artwork. And so I have to ask, since you do it, is there ever a time when you do plan a certain image, or is it always just, 100% of the time, just you let it flow, just kind of let it happen?
I let it flow always. If I plan, I don't think I would have the creativity that I think is required. When I do the competitions, I might be given an element, you know, maybe a house or
Mm,
maybe a car in a field, and then what am I going to do to that image to win the contest? You know, that kind of stuff. So again, it's just picking up the guitar and playing chords until I'm happy.
yeah, yeah. Um, Gary says he likes to compose a background and then wait for whatever comes into the frame. So that's an interesting way
Mhm.
to come up with a happy accident because if you're sitting there, you got a composed scene and you're just waiting for something to come along. Uh, even though you are kind of sort of planning what to do, but I mean, you have no idea what you could get. It could be a car, it could be a person on a bicycle, it could be a dog, could be anything come into the frame, and it's, I guess you could say that's where the happy accident is in that case. So
Y-
that's an interesting concept, an interesting thing to try.
Yeah,
Just
that and Gary, I'll highlight an example of that in one of my two photos that I'm sharing. I did expose for a scene, and I saw some activity around me, and I just wanted to see if something was going to fly or whatever into my scene. Now, like if you're down on the beach and you're filming a bunch of seagulls by the seashore, you know, they're always flying around. So you can set up on those seagulls and just wait for something to come through your frame and take a photo. So I'll show you an example of that. But yeah, you're spot on.
yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Um, so my happy accident, let me just select it there, then I'll put it on screen. There we go. This was at the Canadian Auto Show a bunch of years ago. I went down with a buddy of mine, and um, our main reason for going was to see the Devel 16. I think that's what it's called. It was a sports car with like a 16-cylinder engine, and was just something out of this world. But I mean, there was hundreds of cars there, and so it was a good trip. It was a good time, and it was at the International Center in Toronto, where there's multiple floors. So obviously, to get from one level to the next, you take the escalator. So we're on the escalator, and that's my buddy's feet in the bottom right or bottom left hand corner. And after the show, when we got home, I didn't even realize I had taken this at the time, but I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. So, what can I do to make this, look a little better than just the kind of like the blah coloring? It was kind of sort of dark, it was between floors, and I mean, the whole place was kind of dark anyway, because the main lighting was on the cars, right? Like everything in between was a little less than optimal. Um, so I thought, okay, all I did with this, really, literally, all I did with this is I used a silver tone filter in photos. And this was way back when I had my 10s Max. That's what I took this with. Um, I guess I must have had the camera app open, and I must have either tapped the shutter button or hit the volume to trip the shutter, and this is what came out. And it's completely, from what I understand, if I remember correctly, it's completely uncropped. This is just the way it turned out. Um, I don't know. Maybe that's not quite a 4:3 orientation, but I'll have to check the original and see if it's that's how it turned out or not. But other than that, no. All I did was put the silver tone filter on it, and like Gary says here with the leading lines, that's really it really turned into be a composition that I really liked. You have people with their feet around the bottom and going up the right hand side, and then you have a person up in the top left hand corner, and the escalators kind of going towards the upper right of the frame. And I thought, this is actually a pretty cool shot. I really liked it. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's my happy accident. And that I've taken a few different happy accidents over time, but this has always been my favorite.
Yeah, the silver tone really makes a nice touch too.
Hmm.
Now, are those exceptionally steep escalators, or is it just kind of the angle making them look really steep?
You know what? I think I had a moment wide angle lens on my
Okay.
phone,
Okay.
because that phone did not have an ultra wide lens,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I'm pretty sure I had a moment wide angle lens over the main camera of the phone, so that kind of made it an ultra wide,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why it turned out the way it did.
And
Yeah.
that's another. Oh,
Oh,
sorry. Go
sorry,
ahead.
Dave. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying that's something else that was a happy accident is that you did, because if you had that today, you wouldn't this photo wouldn't turn out because you wouldn't have had the ultra wide. You know, even
Hmm.
if you accidentally took it, it'd probably just be the main wide one, not the ultra wide, or
More than
having a
likely, yeah.
lens on it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, Greg. Let's call this what it is. I mean, you couldn't have taken a better photo of these escalators. So this is the definition of a happy mistake.
Yeah. Oh,
You
yeah, for
couldn't
sure.
you wouldn't think of doing this, but
No.
this is an example of where the tilt is fine, right?
Yeah.
And you've
Yeah.
got these leading lines going from left to right, and that's just a ton of energy going to the right side and whatever the heck's happening there on the right side halfway up the frame. And then you have the gal, I think, sitting, down at the bottom down there. I mean,
Hmm.
those leading lines just bring you right down the escalator. It's a very powerful image, and yeah, this is a definition of a happy mistake. And this gives me an idea of, next time I'm on an escalator, I'm not going to take a horizontal picture of the escalator into the
Yeah.
mall. I'm going to try something like this.
Yeah. And thank you, Todd. He says doing this escalator shot in silver tone and the leading lines makes a shot a winner. Yeah, thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. And thank you, Dwight and Dave. Yeah, it's a it's a picture that sits in my archives, and maybe I need to bring it back and put it back on the social media again, and see what kind of discussion it may generate. But yeah, it was definitely a real pleasant surprise when I opened my camera roll at the end of the day, and I'm going through car, escalator. What? I thought
Yeah, I
this
like
is
how
pretty
it's not
cool.
over sharpened. It's just, it's just really easy to look
Yeah,
at.
yeah. I had no idea I took this shot until I got it. And it's like well, it turned out to be about a 4-hour drive home because the buddy I was with, we stopped partway home and he bought a motorcycle on the way home. Um, didn't pick it up then because this was in February, I think, of that year. And um, but it took an hour or so of time for him to make the purchase of the motorcycle and then drive the rest of the way home. So I could have easily been going through my pictures while I was waiting on him, but no, I was too busy looking at other bikes and stuff. But no, it was a great day, and it became even greater when I stumbled across this. Um, so yeah, so that's our happy accidents, and um, I would say go through your camera roll, and you know this is a good reason not to delete everything. I think, wouldn't you say, Dave?
Yeah, yeah. And this is something that honestly sometimes I do is that when I'm taking a photo, I'll look at it immediately after. I'm like, I don't like it, delete.
Yeah.
Luckily, we do have the 30-day. It's deleted, but not really deleted.
Hmm.
That you can always go to your deleted items, open up the folder, and think, well, I remember taking that photo. Maybe I want to have a second look at it, and
Yeah.
you can go back to, oh no, actually, I do want to save that one.
Hmm.
I've done that before.
Yeah, I
What
have
about you,
too.
Dwight? Have you?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Many times.
yeah.
You just don't want to do the next delete step because then they're gone.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
and they're literally gone.
yeah,
Um, unless okay, harken back to our last show talking about backup and storage and all that stuff. Unless
Yeah.
you put it on Google Photos or one of those services where it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't actually get lost when you delete it from your iCloud photo library. Um, that right there is a good reason to use something like Google Photos, and I really should look into that. I really should. Um, I'm probably going to look into Amazon Photos maybe too, because I mean I got Prime. It's included. I'm
Right.
losing out basically by not using it. So, but yeah. So I don't know. Anything else you guys can touch on with the happy accidents before we move on?
no, I want to see them. I want to see happy accidents from
Yeah.
the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's a good idea, Dwight.
Yeah.
Okay, listeners and viewers, if you haven't if you come across a happy accident in your camera roll, put it in the Facebook group. There's a link in the show notes, and put the hashtag happy accident so that we could find them. And if we get enough of them, maybe we can feature a couple on the next show, because we've been talking about bringing that back. The kind of the idea of Tiny Shutter used to have a post pick of the week,
Mm-hmm.
and Dave and I are very familiar with that because we used to talk about them and
Mm-hmm.
maybe even select some of them. And it's probably an interesting way of maybe engaging. Oh, gotta let my dog out. Hold on. She lays in her dog bed for a bit, but then it comes to the time I think it's too warm in here. She wants out.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a great idea. And we can between the three of us, we'll pick say one picture to feature, like put on the feature as a featured post in the group. So
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, by all means, and we'll put them on the screen during the podcast. Maybe we'll pick one or two to talk about on the show, and so disclaimer: if you don't want to be you have your picture showed on the screen, in the podcast app or on the show, on the YouTube video. Don't put the hashtag on, but
Right.
really, it's not hurting anything. It's if anything, it's going to spark engagement between you and
Mm-hmm.
other photographers and us, and I think it's a great thing. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. So we'll have to think of a name for that part of it, but yeah, I think we're gonna do it full force.
Mm-hmm.
So all right. Um, so now I guess we will move on to our recent photos. So again, don't look at your screen on CarPlay if you're driving, but it will appear there. It'll appear on your podcast player, except Spotify. But Overcast, Pocket Cast, all those, the Apple Podcast app. You'll be able to look at the picture while we're talking about it here, and of course, if you're watching the YouTube video, you're going to see it, right here, right now. And these are just pictures that we've taken recently since the last show, and uh, we just like to talk about them and try to figure out, maybe there's a photo tip in here or something. Who knows? Um, so, with that being said, I have to switch my screen sharing here. And the nice thing about the audio podcast is you're not going to hear all this nonsense. So, Dave, we're going to start with yours.
Okay. Okay, so this was taken on the run that I had on Saturday, and it was like I said, it was still cold. The main lake was frozen over, but one creek leading into the lake was cleared up. So, and this was on the second loop. So the race was it's a 5 mile loop, and so the length of the race is just how many loops you wanted to do. You could do 1, 2, 3, or 4. So this was on the second loop through. So first time I went through, I looked. You're not only I like to look around because it can get a little boring being out there for it was slow. I had issues. It took me 2.5 hours longer than I wanted to, but it took me a while. So I passed this the first time, and it kind of caught my eye. I'm like, okay, second time through. If I'm starting to walk more, I'll stop and take a photo. And I was unfortunately stopping walking more. So I stopped. You're right over a little bridge. And I took the photo, and I was like, I liked the photo how it turned out originally, but I wanted it to be. It was still, as Matt Hoffman called it, stick season. But I wanted a little bit more artistic, a little more like a painting. So I did throw it in the Picasso. And I like the way the colors the border being kind of an aged border, so it isn't a bright white border. I liked how that turned out. And the fact that the creek, and it was kind of a green going to blue. So it adds to I just like the different colors on here where you got the green, you got the blue. You have basically the plants which are being brownish. You have some of the snow there. It was a beautiful blue sky. Just the way it turned out, and it's kind of like the way it just looked there.
Dave, did you just use one app, Picasso?
I used Picasso, and I want to say I used Photomator to tweak let me just double check here.
Some of the hues.
Yeah, I did Photomator to kind of maybe sharpen it a little bit to give a little more details and kind of give it some texture.
Yeah.
Just because a lot of times the colors, I wanted it to have more of a pop, and like I said, just the way the crick had that green and yellow and blue in it, I wanted to make that pop a little bit more. So I put in the Photomator and did some edits that way.
Yeah, I think you did a good job on the colors. I think that's pretty artistic. I like the way that ended up.
Yeah, it's very vibrant, and you've put a few of these on Facebook lately, like from the Picasso app that I've seen, and this uh, the vibrancy of the colors really sets it off. And that border, that was from Picasso as well.
Yeah. Yeah, they
Oh
do
yeah.
have basically they have sets, they have presets, and you can make changes off the preset or make changes on your own. And they give you basically three borders at no cost, and if you want, the full assortment for
Hmm.
everything, it's a step up.
Right.
But if you take one of their presets and then they include like a premium, like this border is considered a premium border, but it was in one of the presets they had, you can keep
Ooh.
it, use it without paying for it. You
Oh,
just
that's all
can't
right.
change it to another premium one. But
Yeah.
it's like I said, I kind of like I don't like having a stark white or stark black border. So sometimes, and good, this is all personal preference. I know borders were heavy in 15 years ago, and
Yeah.
then everyone got rid of the borders. I like them now and then, especially if I'm
Oh.
trying to, and it's kind of if I'm trying to make, because I can't paint. Ruth will tell you I can't paint. So this to me is kind of my painting. This is me
Hmm.
taking
Yeah.
a photo, and then if I could paint, I would produce something like this. And so to me, a border here works. And a lot of times, like I said, I don't like it just a straight white or straight black border or matte like you would for a photo. So I'll put one border on, and like either Picasso or Camera Plus has some decent borders, or Snapseed. And then
Hmm.
I'll go to another app and add one of their borders. So I'll kind of layer it on layer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just
Go
going to
ahead,
say,
Greg.
Gary says borders give a sense of nostalgia. I
Hmm.
was just thinking that this border, has a an old time look to it. Like it's
Hmm.
the color of it. It looks like it's worn a little bit. It's faded. Looks like faded. The paper's gone yellow, like if it was a print. Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. So next you have Dwight.
Yeah, so this was a couple nights ago in at Crystal Cove, and this is a happy accident as well. I just wanted to catch the silhouette, but when I looked at the photo, I noticed that the sun was kind of going through her sweater just for like an additional highlight off of what she was wearing. And it's a dark photo. Nothing's pure black there. I made sure of that in the editing process, but just a simple photo. I like the backlit, I think is what you call it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Black.
This is before a pretty incredible sunset, which you'll see on my next photo.
Yeah. Yeah. This is you have a knack, Dwight, of putting the horizon line in the center of the frame, which is basically against the rules, but every time you do, it works so well.
Yeah, I mean, I took advantage of the leading lines of the rocks coming from the lower right,
Hmm.
but I was more concerned about keeping the subject on the right third. There was nothing for me to gain by having the horizon on the top because it was
Hmm.
too
Yeah.
dark below, and then if I put it on the bottom, it would have just been more sky. So I think central composition, I think on this one works. But thanks, I'll see if we did that. I did that on my other photo. I'll have to see. I
Yeah.
think I might have it
Hmm.
on the top third for that one or the bottom third. I can't remember.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember either. And I just looked at it not too long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, and I love the silhouette. And I think it works here that the colors of the sunset are muted. So you don't have, like you said, sometimes you get the, sky on fire sunset, but just having it, being kind of earth tones almost.
Hmm.
Where it's like you have a nice yellow, but it's not like overly bright. It just fits the mood for this image,
Yeah,
and the
that's a
fact
good
that there's. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a good point. When I first started editing, I would have the propensity just to crank up all the the sliders, the vibrance and the saturation, and yeah, I definitely wanted to practice restraint on this one.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of hard for everyone, to be honest, because you always a lot of times you just want to pop, and
Hmm.
it's almost like the explanation point of photography.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Also, the fact that the sky does have some just a hint, a wisp of clouds kind of going across it, giving it some texture, so it isn't just a plain sky.
Yeah.
I
Nature's
think that helps
gradient
too.
too on the colors.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that restraint that you strongly had here takes the emphasis off the sky and puts it on your wife,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
it makes her the subject of the photo. It because if it was like really really bright colors and everything else, then she would kind of get soaked up in that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that takes away from the subject here.
Hmm.
So well done on the restraining part, because like you say, that's something that a lot of people don't do.
It
So
took me a while to learn it. You
yeah.
just it again. I'm trying to bring it back to the scene as I remember it,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's hard to do. If you're shooting in RAW, Pro Raw is a little bit easier, but yeah.
And I think when you think of a sunset, I mean, the first thing you want to do is you want to make it really pop, like Dave said. Like it's something that you just want to do with it, and doing what you did here is definitely the right decision for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So going from a nice warm sunset to the cold, bitter freezing of winter, which is what we're experiencing here. Uh, this was, of all places, out behind it was on the back wall of the plant of the building that I work in, and this was just yesterday. Um, One of the guys I work with, he went out. Um, he's been watching this ice build up for days, because there's at the roof there's a spout for drainage. If the snow melts on the roof, it's flowing down, and it's coming out this pipe, and it's been building up and building up and building up. And this was uh, I could have used a picture of the whole formation that shows you going from the ground right up to the rooftop, and it was probably about 20 feet, maybe more, at this particular part. And it just kept flowing, and it just kept building up and building up and building up. And it wasn't exactly freezing cold this day. Like yesterday at work, it wasn't really freezing cold. It wasn't as nice as today, but it was still kind of mild, like right around freezing maybe. So um I just took a few shots. This is just with the 5x camera, and I use reflex, and I took it raw, and I did a I did an edit in Lightroom, which the subscription has expired, because I'm gonna try to see if I can get along with Photomator, because it has masking and stuff. Um, and I did an edit in Lightroom, but you know what? Photomator did a better job. Um, it was just the colors in Lightroom just didn't pop. Like I couldn't get them to pop as much as Photomator did. Like it to look the raw file, it's almost like blank white. There was no contrast. There was no color tone to it. But as soon as I started adding saturation and vibrance, this bluish color just came out of the ice. So that's a mound of snow in the foreground. Excuse me. And just the way the ice formed as it was dripping and down, and the way the wind might blow some here and there, whatever. And that's just it's just how it came to be. And what really caught my eye was how it kind of reminded me of um, Superman's home planet in the movies. with the ice stacks and different things like that, and that's kind of what it reminded me of. So
Yeah.
I
Oh,
thought it was kind of a fun image.
oh yeah. And honestly, the fact that you have two different ice flows, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
You know, you have your sheet, and then the kind of the bumpy, almost looking like a cliffside. You know, on
Yeah.
the left, where it's more of a natural kind of, if you think rocks and things freezing as it's coming down. So yeah, agree with Gary here. Wonderful texture, and like you said, making it where you can tweak it just to get that the blue coming out. Because I know
hmm
a lot of times when you're shooting snow, a lot of times we don't necessarily want the blue because it's something you have to fight against if you want. But here, emphasizing it definitely works.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
but
for me, this looks like a cliffside, as Dave mentioned, and looks like a frozen waterfall to me on the right. Um, so
it kind of
apparently,
is.
yeah, that's got to be something that's dripping and froze over time, I would imagine. But for me, right off the bat, this is a texture, and this would go right into my textures folder. I would use this in my artwork, and I would maybe in Procreate grab that green color and uh, you know do some brush strokes with it to balance off the image. Um, but yeah, this is the kind of stuff that I'm always looking for my textures.
Well, you're free to use it, right?
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah, no worries there. Um, Scott says Scott Baker at Nova Scotia says, "I'm so over winter right now." Well, he's a cyclist, so that goes without question there.
He's tired of indoor cycling right now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Scott, you were riding in December, I think, if memory serves me. Uh, so yeah, as soon as the roads are bare, I'm sure you'll be out there somewhere. But yeah, this is definitely winter here, but I just thought it was really cool that this was building up on the wall outside at work, and maybe on the Facebook group when I put all these pictures on, I'll drop a picture in of the whole thing, and you'll see where I got this from. But I thought it was a lot better isolating smaller parts of it than it was to show the whole thing, because this whole thing is it's just a big glob of ice on the back wall of a building. So
Actually, I'm kind of surprised they well, I don't know of how easy it would be to get rid of it, but I'm
well,
thinking it's not necessarily a safety issue, but a structural issue.
you know what though? Funny enough, Dave, it's and the guy I work with, his name is Dave too. He wanted to get a great big bar and pry it off and get me out there filming it in slow motion to watch it come falling down into the driveway at the back. But yeah, you'll see what I mean when I drop a couple other pictures in to show where this all came from.
Hmm.
I don't think it's actually hurting the building, because I think it's actually somewhat separated from the building.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
mm, Whether it's the mild weather that did it or what, I don't know. But yeah, it was fun to explore it in little sections. I got a
Hmm.
bunch of different little pictures of it. Some that I have to process yet, but it was kind of cool.
And that's right by your work, right?
Yeah, right on the back of the building. Yeah.
I'm surprised there's not a beers shoved into that mound in the front. That looks like a nice cooler for
Yeah,
after
well,
shift.
there might be an empty Tim Hortons cup laying around there somewhere. So Dave, this is your kitty.
Yes, that's Rosie, and I was just laying down on the couch, just relaxing, and she likes to go in the back of it, and just again, happy accident. It was just her being up there and me just happening to be laying down, looking straight up at her, and took a couple pictures. And I just loved the way she kind of just her pose, and just kind of like, it's almost like a Simba pose.
Yeah.
She's looking over her domain
Yeah.
and seeing what's out there.
She's definitely queen of that room right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I was thinking that.
I think cats are so photogenic. when you post on glass and you put a cat on there, it recognizes it and the app starts purring.
Yeah,
Oh.
like if you hit the button to send an appreciation,
Yeah, it starts
it's actually
purring.
the shape of a cat,
Yeah,
and it'll make an audible, you know,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and the phone will vibrate with it. It's actually a really cool thing, and I think it's because uh oh, why is my memory failing me now? Uh, well, one of the guys on the glass team, I interviewed him before, and but he's a cat lover, I think, and I think that's maybe part of the reason why that's
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, I like the. Was that portrait mode photo?
No, this is
Oh,
just a
it
normal
recognized the
photo.
pet. Okay, so
Yeah,
it
yeah,
recognized the pet.
exactly, exactly. So it
Yeah,
recognized it, and she was close enough to me that even I don't if I know it was portrait mode, but I didn't. She was close enough to me. There would just be that natural in focus, not in focus.
yeah. It looks like really nice separation
Thanks.
between she and the background.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I really like the expression on her face, like it's like I know you just fed me, Dad, but it's time to eat again, or something. You know, this is an example of there's always a story
Hmm.
that can be told from the image. Yeah,
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the story also may be here that looking out for the baby kitten
Ah, yeah,
because a lot of times the baby kitten wants to play, and Rosie's 11 years old and she doesn't want to play as much.
right.
So the baby kitten will do things like go behind the sofa and try to jump up and bat her when Rosie's on top,
Oh,
like an annoying little sister.
yeah, yeah. Gary's got a good point here. Low angle
Hmm.
shooting adds drama, showing the cat's superiority. Yeah, that's about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Rudolph when they walk into that. I don't know, that temple on the Misfit Toys, and there's that big lion or something up
Hmm.
on, sitting in that chair. It kind of looks like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's another, example of you just take a picture without really thinking too much of it, and it turns out to be actually a pretty good shot.
Hmm.
Yeah. So Dwight, here's the one that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I didn't care about where the horizon was on that one because that's above the halfway point.
A little bit, yep.
Yeah, for me to go any lower in the sand, it was pure black. I'm not against minimalism by any means. Um, but again, the subject was in the lower right third.
Hmm.
This is the example, I think, kind of going off what Gary said earlier. She's in the lower right third, and the sun was just dropping into that little dip in Catalina Island. So I only had a few seconds here, and I wanted to just kind of hang out. There were a lot of birds flying around. So I was set up on this thing, and luckily enough, just before that sun disappeared, and we actually did see a green flash, this bird appeared. So I just thought it made it more interesting. Again, we're talking about happy accidents, and
Hmm.
I don't know if this was an accident, but kind of a happy on purpose because I waited, and this fulfilled my objective of something flying into the screen. So
Yeah, yeah.
And actually, it sounds kind of weird. One time I visited my dad 40 some years ago in the early 80s. And I remember he was out in California. And I remember buying a photo, like and it looked very similar to this.
hmm,
It was a sunset photo with a bird, but it was more vertical. But it was a sunset photo on the beach with the bird in silhouette, and had a very similar feel to it.
yeah, and hopefully this really you can kind of feel the emotion of the subject. I mean, she did not move from that
Mm.
from that way she was standing for a long time. So for me, it was just kind of powerful watching that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Gary says, amazing the gull in relation to the figure. Great photobomb by the gull.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the colors are nice and vibrant, a lot more so than your previous photo.
Hmm.
Um, I'm going to say you did do a little bit of saturation work here, but it works this time. I mean, this time it really works. Because
Very, very little.
oh,
Um,
really? It was
yeah,
that hybrid, was it?
yeah, very, very little. This was on the 5X lens, and I think that one lets more color in than the 1X lens.
Oh,
Uh, at least in my experience, the telephoto lenses on the iPhone usually let in more color. Yeah, I couldn't do too much of this thing, or it was going to get crazy. Um, there's that one spot where the moon is kind of, or the sun is kind of burning up the shore there a little bit. I might have fixed that
yeah.
if I saw that, but um,
Oh, I like it.
yeah,
I kind of like that. Um, I think it adds to it a little bit. But and you don't mean remove it though, right? You mean just
maybe tone it down just a little bit.
okay.
I'll have to look at it,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'll
Gary
scrutinize
says,
all my photos. There's always something I want to change.
well, we're always our own worst critic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Gary says the simpler the image, the more it beckons the viewer back. Yeah, that's
Mm.
kind of true too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I love the coloring. You know, the fact that the sun is just on the verge of disappearing. You know that adds a point of interest to it,
Hmm.
and yeah, yeah, just another great shot.
Thank you. And it just happens to be setting. That's Catalina Island out there, so you're only seeing about a third of the island. It goes another two-thirds off to the left, off the photo,
Oh
and it was
wow.
just really cool that it was just going down right in that dip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of neat. Well, this one here,
Cool.
this is Snowpocalypse. This is so I live in a little city called Owen Sound. That's two words, Owen Sound. And it's been affectionately known lately as Snowin Sound. In fact, I think the fella who coined that phrase was Jordan Binnington. He's the goalie for the St. Louis Blues. He in junior hockey, he played for our local junior A team, and they won the championship that year. And we had a lot of snow that year, and he kept calling it Snow and Sound. He's from Richmond Hill down by Toronto, and I don't know if he's used to having this much snow when he grew up or not, but he kind of coined that phrase "Snow and Sound," I think, and it kind of stuck around here. This is actually the street that I lived on when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and it's a narrow little street. Uh, I cut my teeth in road hockey on this street. Gosh, uh, got my first set of stitches in my forehead living on this street. Um, my dad was a real avid hunter of raccoons, and back in the times when we lived on this street, they used to get the hides in the fall and sell them and make a lot of money that way because there was a big market for them. And we had a little mud room in the house, and it was just wall to wall raccoon pelts, floor to ceiling. Like they were very successful at getting these raccoons. And the farmers really welcomed them out because they would ruin their corn crops. So, that's one of the reasons why he got so many. But anyway, uh, the snowbanks in town, I tried to find a picture that really emphasized the snowbanks in town here. And I mean, after today, they're probably going to be down about a foot, maybe 2 feet, just because of the south wind evaporating the snow and the fact that a lot of it is melted. But this was on a day where when I started out, it was sunny, and then it turned into this with a snowfall and almost looks like a blizzard, and then it just became cloudy all within an hour that I was out going driving around town taking these pictures. And uh, Gary says, "Wow, the yellow pedestrian sign makes the photo. It tells a visual story." Yeah, it does. And I had a bunch of different pictures with signs like this where some of them were, the snow was right up to the sign. Sometimes the snow was almost over the sign. It's been crazy. Um, I'm gonna have to post a couple of more pictures of what we've been experiencing here. And people were getting so frustrated because they're running out of places to put the snow. Like you blow out the driveway with a snow blower and the snowbanks, like the snowbanks at the end of my driveway were up to the top of the roof of my truck or almost or close to it. Like I would have to creep out and it was like this at just about every corner in the city. You'd have and it's not just here, it's all around this whole area. But you'd have to creep out very slowly and make sure nobody's coming. And if somebody was coming, if you didn't see them, you just want to hope they'd stop because it's just there was no place to put the snow. But this is actually a three-shot panorama.
Mm.
Um, three vertical shots. Basically the three-thirds, but well overlapped. And okay, so Dwight and I were talking the other day about panoramas, and I could not get Affinity Photo to do a panel. Couldn't get it to do it with raw files. Couldn't get it to do it JPEGs. They recently updated it, and I think I might have tried it before the update. And I thought, okay, I did the update where it has some AI selection stuff in it now, and and I tried it after the update. It would not do the panel. You can go to files, start new or create new panorama or whatever. Would not work, and I was so annoyed. But then I realized, bing, I had BMO Stitch on my phone. BMO Stitch put this together in an instant, and it's just absolutely flawless in how it does it. So if you're ever having trouble doing a panel, get BMO Stitch in your phone, and it'll work for sure. But anyway, so yeah, then these were three raw files, and I basically I edited. I think it was maybe the one on the right, and then I just copied and pasted the adjustments in the other two, and there it is. So I lived in. Okay, so you see that big gray house on the right hand side? It looks like it's filling up the top right corner of the frame. I lived in the next one. Next one to
Okay.
that. That's where I lived
Okay.
when I was 4 years old. That's like 55 years ago.
Well, it also looks like the streets. I mean, like you said, this is during the snow, but it looks like the streets haven't even been. How long does it take them to actually touch the street to clean it off?
Well, they do the main ones first,
Right.
obviously,
Yeah.
and all the little side streets like this, they kind of suffer a little bit. Um, Even the street I live on, as busy as it can be, sometimes it's a little later before they hit it. And I really feel sorry for people who live on a dead end street or a cul-de-sac because they're generally the last ones to get plowed.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and there's a sidewalk on each side of the street, but you wouldn't know it. It's been
Yeah,
crazy.
Greg, this is frightening to me. Um, those two houses in the background look like they have eyes, and then if you see, it looks like through the road there's a smile. That's like a
Yeah.
horror movie. I'm not knocking where you grew up. I'm sure it's beautiful, but um, I don't get this. So if you need to get from that house in the back out to the main road, what do? You can't?
You don't.
Okay, you mean in the center of the frame?
Yeah.
Okay, those houses are on another street that goes, left to right.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm basically looking from one end of the block to the other end of the block, and because
So
if you
that
look
street may actually
carefully,
be taken care of.
So
May.
yeah,
May.
Gray House and your old house aren't getting out
well, they could. It's
unless
hard
these
to
are
tell, but actually
backyards.
the people's driveways are cleaned out.
Okay.
But it was
Okay.
snowing hard enough that it's kind of hiding that.
Yeah, and the sign I think kind of makes it too, because it kind of ties in with the slight bit of oranges and yellows and stuff in the trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you're barbecuing in that weather.
You know what people do?
Oh
People
yeah.
do.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, no, it was absolutely crazy.
I need to go jump in
Because
the jacuzzi after seeing this.
well, funny enough, another buddy of mine, uh, behind his house, there's a hot tub, and he put a picture on him and his wife. They're sitting in the hot tub, and there's like snow everywhere
Mm-hmm.
around them. Like, so yeah, people still use their hot tubs in this kind of weather. But yeah, it's been a crazy, crazy winter around here. There's a picture that I took, and I should have put. I've almost used it instead of this one, but this one had more of a story to it because it was where I lived
Mm-hmm.
and everything else. But the other picture was a vertical shot. Well, I cropped it to a vertical shot of a house just on one of the streets that I drove down, and the snowbank. I took it from the window in my truck, in my pickup truck, and the snowbank was up so high, all you could see was the top two windows of the house and the roof. That was it.
Mm.
Like, it's just crazy. I'm gonna have to dig out some of the footage from my dash cam and maybe put together a little video of these little drives around, and you know, so people can see just how crazy it was around here.
See, the
Yeah,
way
it's
what gets to me about driving in something like this, it's well, it depends on how hilly the area is. Because if you're in a hilly area, you hope that you can stop, or there's not ice underneath. When you're dealing with a really snowy road.
well, the hills here. So our little city here, and I say little because it's only a population of like 22,000. Um, on each side of the city, there's the west side and the east side. There's hills that go up. So I live up on the east side, and then you go down this big hill through the downtown area, and then on the other side of town it goes up again. Um, so this is down. This is almost in the middle of town.
Mm,
This
okay.
picture, and but the streets with the hills are usually kept pretty good. They salt the roads and everything else so that people don't um, get stuck or whatever. They do a pretty good job of keeping the hills cleared for people. So yeah, thanks Gary for stopping by, and all
Mm-hmm.
and for your comments and stuff. We'll see you on the next one. Um, Gary's leaving here. There you go, folks. Um, but yeah, it's but there could be some hills that are maybe not as well taken care of, and people just kind of go another way. Um, I think there's been a few accidents around town with all this, but I think it's mostly because people can't see around the corners, and
Mm,
when they go to you know turn a corner or cross a way or
mm-hmm.
whatever, you know, they can't see a car coming, and the rest is history. So it's been crazy. It's definitely been crazy. So yeah, so that's our recent photos, and um, I think that picture there has been the most story worthy picture that I've ever put on here. Just because of where it is, and the history behind it for me personally, and whatnot. So I think that's why I picked that one over some of the other possibilities. But
Made Dave cold too.
yeah, look at that. Well, I see you're wearing a sweater too, Dwight. How's the AC?
I had a spot on my shirt, so I had to.
Ah, okay. So well, I guess that's our show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So, folks, don't forget to use VoiceCast. The link's right there in the show notes, and in the YouTube description. And all you got to do is click on it, and hit the button to record a thing. I guess to record your call, and you know tell us what you want us. Tell us what to do for a show later. Give us some show ideas if you want. If there's something you want to know about, something you want to learn. If we don't know about it, we'll figure it out and talk about it on the show type of thing. And I think it'd be a good thing. Yeah, and thank you, Dave, for pointing it to me because it didn't take me long at all to set it up.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, so on that note, though, I guess. Oh, and also stick around, folks, on the YouTube channel. Dwight's going to show us kind of a few steps that he took to get his happy accident. But audio listeners, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Have a great one,
All
everyone.
right, great. So I'll go ahead and present.
Yep, go ahead.
Let's see.
Oh, hang on, I got to stop screen sharing. Okay, there you go.
Okay. You guys see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So I like to work in layers. And the way I started this one was I created a gradient, and it was just a random color. I can always change the colors of the gradient later. So that was just the first thing I did.
Now,
And then,
Dwight, real
Oh, yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
What are you doing this in?
This is superimpose X.
Okay, I just wanted to just
Yep.
in case anyone wanted to follow along or had their own programs.
Yeah. So this is, I would call superimpose X, a semi Photoshop equivalent on iOS. This was done on an iPad. Excuse me. So now it's time for me to go get my elements. So I have this guy who is off another picture that I had, and then I masked him out and I just stuck him in there. Now I have to start building the scene around him. So I had this photo that I had saved as one of my textures. So, and as I mentioned, I can layer all of these and superimpose X and then, change the blend mode and stuff like that. So once I put, and then I had a tree that I wanted to put in there as well. So when I put them all together, you can see the background that I showed you. You can see the
Mhm.
gentleman standing there, and I also added the dog, and you can see my layers on the right-hand side there. So really all I'm doing is composing my image at this point. And then I started working on some of the shadows. I didn't like how they came out, so I think I did some other stuff. But I also added some water, which gave a reflection, and I added some a little bit of mist along the shoreline. Okay, so now I've got my composition basically, and now, and this just a quick note. This was just really simple. I threw this together in about 10 minutes. Just want to kind of give you an idea of how I do some of my stuff. And then, from here on, I want to start kind of balancing the colors and doing some color grading. So that's kind of the step we're going to go into now. Oh, and I do like to trace get a sketch of the uh, piece here, and then I'll save that off, and then I'll bring it back in and just kind of overlay it with a blend mode. And then I added kind of a
So just real quick,
yep.
is that just to soften some of the edges of the different pieces?
No, actually, it kind of hardens them, and it puts some lines in there, makes it a little bit more sharp.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and then I added a kind of a watercolor texture to this thing. So I'm just just riffing, just kind of moving along. Then I added more texture, and then I started playing with it's like doing some color grading, trying to figure out, that tree was just a little too saturated for me compared to the rest of the scene. So, how do I isolate that and get some of the color out? Am I really happy with this? And just kind of shows you kind of the process. And then I'm just kind of moving through here. I added some birds at the top. Um, And then I think, yeah, that's just my final color grade. So if you see the tree, it's not as saturated as it
Mhm.
was before, and it still kind of sticks out a little bit. But again, this is just a kind of an example of the way I work, and it can get really complicated. But I like to kind of create my own scenes and try to put together my own story essentially. And I hope to be doing a little more of this stuff, at some point because it's really a hobby of mine. I really can kind of get lost. And I started doing this at the beginning of COVID, and for me, it just beats anything that's on TV. And I get a chance to be creative, and I do a lot of art competitions with this kind of stuff. I may have been given just the man there, then I would have had to build around him, or I may have given the dog, or maybe the tree, and I would
Right.
had
Yeah.
to kind of compose the rest of it. The problem I'm having now is it's kind of taken the wind out of my sails just a little bit. Is, let's say I had that man, and then, a lot of the competitions have gone to AI now that, they'll say, take this man and put him in a forest, it's nighttime, with the moon shining through the trees, and they hit enter and they're done. See, I
Mm,
refuse to do that. I'm not
yeah.
going down that path. So, but I'm competing with that AI technology, and that's fine. I've had my wins, and I've also seen some of the stuff that's beat me. That's just it's fine. It's whatever the judges want. I don't take it personally, but it's a fantasy kind of picture. It's like
Yeah.
no human really kind of did that. And sometimes I'll take this into Procreate. I like brush strokes, as you can see, like right through the middle there. That looks like there's some brush strokes for texture. I might grab some of the colors and make brush strokes. Just maybe like a little crosshatch pattern in the lower left, or um, just to kind of spice it up. But I didn't want to get too detailed here, because I think that this particular scene would have been too complicated.
Yeah. No, it's a really interesting process for sure. Um, I'm just trying to show you something
And
here
it's
that
really interesting to see the different programs that are available that you wouldn't know about.
Yeah, I
Like,
use I use a lot of programs to do my work, and I've been developing these for, not developing the programs, but learning about them and using
mhm.
them, over time. There's a lot of them, and what I'm trying not to do is, I don't want I don't want I'm more than happy to share the programs, but I don't want somebody to look at my photos for these competitions and be able to tell what programs I used, right? We call
Right.
that
yeah.
app tracking. And it's so I'm just trying to set myself apart a little bit. So, if you guys want to see some of the stuff that I've done, it's on my Instagram. I think that's in the show notes.
Yeah.
Now, I'll also say I looked up Superimposed X on the App Store.
Hmm.
It is $4.99, and there's an in-app purchase. It's an AI membership, so I imagine for the $4.99 you get a good amount of what you need. But it does offer, if you're interested in the AI stuff, it's a monthly. I'm going to round here, $3 or yearly $18, I guess, to get the full AI, which I sort of understand, because they're probably not using their own AI program. They're using, they probably have a tie into an existing program that costs them money. So,
Yeah, I won't use the AI stuff. Well, arguably some of this is AI, right? Because I'm actually not making the actual strokes, and
right.
another program created that reflection. So I think it's arguably, we're still using AI, but I'm vehemently against using AI generated images. I think
Hmm.
as a whole, I don't think the AI piece of it we can completely get rid of. I think Procreate's probably the closest you can get, because you'll take a blank canvas and actually pick your paintbrush and the paint and the opacity, and actually paint on your screen. And there's some really amazing stuff that people are doing in Procreate. So I'm kind of moving over to Procreate more, and working in layers over there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking for a long time we got to get Nikki Fitzgerald on the show.
Yeah,
Um,
Nikki and I have, we go back, and I've learned stuff from her, and um, iColorama is a big program for me too, and
mhm.
I've used that over time. Kind of try to help me get the different tones and balance, and really kind of neat stuff in there. The downside to iColorama is there you can't work in layers, so you have to save
Mm.
off pieces of what you're doing, and then blend them together.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of my happy accident, from an art perspective. And they all end up this way. I didn't plan this out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's cool. Scott Baker, I'm going to share my screen here. He sent me this photo.
Ah,
So that was the ice picture that we just talked about in our recent photos,
Hmm.
and this is what he did with it. So I don't know if he must have taken it into something like Chat GPT, or I don't know if he could have done this in the image playground or not.
But he
I'm,
used
I'm
his he
thinking he
used his
used
imagination well, because that's really
it's
looks
pretty
like what
damn
should be
cool.
going on there.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And if this was the case, those guys would be the size of Lego men, in relation
Yeah.
to the ice, in the real size of the ice. So that's really clever. Um, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
so
Yeah, Greg,
good on
I've
you,
tried
Shane.
to get away from Photoshop and Lightroom. I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah,
Photomator does not have the luminosity masking that I need. Um, Otherwise, I'd probably ditch it. Um, I think Luminar Neo is trying. I've tried, and I have just about every app, and I think I'm just spoiled. But yeah, I mean, if you get what you need on the Photomator side, that's great.
well, looking at like when you've done edits in Photoshop, and I look at that tool palette you've got going, like you're not going to get that anywhere else,
Right.
right?
No, you can actually get
Well,
something similar in Affinity Photo, but they call it something else,
and isn't oh, what is it called?
but
GIMP?
not panels like that.
No, but
Right.
isn't GIMP there's that free photo editor? Is it
GIMP is a
GIMP?
free
Yeah.
Photoshop alternative. I
Yeah,
think I haven't
and
checked it out.
yeah, I downloaded it once and just tried to look at it, and I'm not afraid to say this, got scared and never opened it again because
Yeah.
it's similar to Photoshop where it's like, oh, here's like all the things. And you're like, where do I want to? Well, how do I?
I was
Yeah.
so lost when I first started Photoshop. I was frustrated, and I think I jumped into a 30-day to Photoshop thing that kind of kicked me off, and then I found these panels, and I just can't look back.
Yeah. 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 It can be pretty intimidating for sure.
Yeah.
And even Affinity Photo, excuse me, even Affinity Photo can be, you know, intimidating and frustrating because I have yet to still figure out. And Dwight, you and I were going to sit down one of these days and figure this out. But the like gradient masks, for doing or even a radial mask, they don't
Hmm.
work in Affinity Photo. Hey Shane, um, they don't work in Affinity Photo like they do in Photoshop, Lightroom, Photomator for that matter. They're different. They're weird, and I
Yeah.
haven't been able to figure out
Hmm.
how, like to use a radial gradient to make a vignette. Don't know. Haven't
Right.
been able to figure it out.
And the
Um,
luminosity masking part, some will argue that it's better than Photoshop, but you just don't know what tonal value you're in, right? You don't know if it's, darks 5 or lights 1. You just and that drives me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Shane, if you're just joining us, the regular program is over, and we're just shooting the breeze here. um, Dwight was showing us kind of step by step of how he come up with his um, happy accident, which was our topic tonight. So, but yeah, it's you know, learning a new program for editing can be difficult at best. Um, and there's a lot of good ones. There's On One. There's um, what used to be Raw Power. Now they call it Nitro. Um,
Mm.
and when the reason for that change, if anybody's okay, thanks Shane. He's going to listen to it all later. Um, the reason they changed the name from Raw Power to Nitro is because they rewrote the whole thing for the M series
Mm.
chipset.
Okay.
And the
Yeah.
same with, I want to say, well, I know Affinity Photos Update is just for, on the Mac side, it's just for the M series chips. But funny thing is, on the Windows side, the Windows version of Affinity Photo works on all Windows machines, no matter what the chipset, because they don't use the M series, obviously. But the only thing that you can use Affinity Photo on an older Mac, an Intel Mac, but you won't get the AI selection stuff that they've added in.
Right.
So
Right. That was on that video I sent you, I think. I have
yeah,
On One. I think I had a discounted version last year, and I got recharged again this year for it, and it was 1.5 times more expensive than Photoshop
wow,
for the version where you can get the Pro Tools and stuff like that. So I'm
yeah,
currently evaluating that one.
yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it's
Luminar Neo's getting better.
yeah. I think Shane might have that. I'm not sure.
It's
Um,
getting better. They've got you can isolate colors and tones in there. Um,
yeah,
and you and I did something on one of your photos. I thought that brought out a nice mood. That one time we were just doing it. That was the lake, and we brought the sun out a little bit. Remember that?
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
The sunset. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, uh, I think Pixelmator Pro might have luminosity masks. I'm not sure.
I don't believe so,
No? Okay.
but don't quote me. I'll have to look at that.
Yeah. Dave, do you ever use masks in Photomator?
Occasionally I do. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it does a pretty good job automatically doing the mask,
Yeah.
especially the sky. And I've done basically a reverse mask if I want to do stuff that's not sky.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'll
you
do
pretty well have
sky
to.
and then, yeah. Because a lot of times it's like, well, I want to do, I don't, there's no subject in the front. And it's
Yeah.
not really, it would be considered kind of background that I want to maybe do a little different with the lighting or nothing like that. So that's pretty much why I use it that way.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a
Yeah.
little concerned if Apple takes Photomator away like they did Dark Sky after the purchase.
Mm.
Because I know a lot of people, after Apple bought the Dark Sky weather app, basically said, oh, we thought it was going to be Apple weather was going to be wonderful because they're just going to plug Dark Sky in, Dark Sky, and they're like, oh, Apple weather sucks.
Yeah.
It's no good. And it's like, well, why'd you buy this great team and it didn't help your product? So
Well, I think it's
hopefully,
better now than it used to be.
yeah, but it's still
But
not the whole where Dark Sky used to be able to say, oh, it's going to rain in 15 minutes and it's going to last 7.
see, I
It
wouldn't know
still
because
have
Dark
issues.
Sky wasn't available in Canada,
Yeah.
right? So, but yeah, any of you guys that are in the States were spoiled by Dark Sky. I could see, Yeah, I could see your case there. So, oh, Mike Armstrong's in the house. On one has a pretty good luminosity masking ability. Have you ever used it, Dwight?
Yeah, I have. It is pretty good.
Okay.
You just don't know what tonal range you're in. I
Oh,
want to know
really?
where my dark ones. I want to know where my midtones twos and ones are.
So how do you select the tone that you play with?
In
Like,
Photoshop, you can kind of do that because when let's say if
oh, but
I
in on one though, like,
in the adjustment there is a masking option, and then you go through in the masking option there is a luminosity mask that you can add to it. It's like a little light bulb down at the bottom. You click on that, and then you can drag the sliders and kind of work within the range.
oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of cool tools out there that, make our lives really make things a lot
Complicated.
simpler to do. Make our lives complicated, yeah. But sometimes
Well, yeah.
sometimes they can make the workflow go a lot smoother.
It can. I'm just kind of a maniac trying to learn them all.
Yeah, you're gonna, your head's just gonna go boom.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna. What was it we said we were gonna do one time as a separate video? Was that one of your art creations?
Yeah, I think at some point. You also mentioned earlier. Are you referring to earlier in the show when you mentioned the happy mistakes we wanted to see from the audience?
No, no, that's just something I want them to put in the group.
Okay.
But no, you and I were talking one time about doing a separate video, just a standalone video,
yeah.
and putting it out.
More of a deep dive. More of a
Yeah,
deep dive,
maybe
step by step.
like a recording directly
Yeah.
from my iPad or something like that.
Yeah,
at some point.
just on the YouTube channel. Like, it won't be obviously it won't be on the audio podcast, but
Right.
yeah, I think that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, at some point we can do that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. If the snow ever, I think the snow should be gone here by July, maybe August. Oh, it's crazy. Well, hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to drive around a little bit around town and see just how much these banks have come down.
Now, are you off of work this week?
I go in Wednesday night and Thursday night.
Okay, so you lucked out with the roads then.
Actually, our roads now, like my street was 2-3 inches of snow a couple of days ago. Now it's pavement.
Wow.
It's evaporated a lot, and with the traffic and everything else, it's really all the streets that I've driven on anyway today were all right down to the pavement.
Okay, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now the snowbanks are still kind of sticking
Right.
out. The streets
Right.
are still narrower than they need to be, but
That's almost like driving when you have a lot of hedges.
yeah.
You like in the summer when if people have hedges and they're overgrown and they're kind of blocking your sights for
Yeah,
going around
yeah.
and driving around.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, where I live now in the suburb around Pittsburgh, they keep really good. Of course, they're smaller area wise, so it's a lot easier than dealing with in the city. And the city does have steeper roads than some of the suburbs do. So they're much harder to deal with.
Yeah.
But when I lived in the city, it was like, like literally, it was like, oh, we're going to get 3 or 4 inches of snow because of where we lived. I wouldn't even call us a secondary street. We were, tertiary, fourth level. We were like fourth level street where we were. So it's like, oh, it's going to snow 2 or 3 inches. Park on the main road and walk a couple blocks down because otherwise we won't be able to get off to go to work tomorrow.
Yeah.
And this is back in the 80s when the city had a little bit more population and a little bit more money where they could afford to have more snowplows and everything else.
Yeah. Well, today was the first day I drove around not in 4-wheel drive in probably a week and a half. Even though some of the roads were plowed, if they were still snow covered, I like to keep it in four-wheel drive just to have that traction, right? Because it's a pickup, it's light on the back end. So if I keep it in four-wheel drive, if I take off from a corner, I go. I don't sit there and
You don't
spin
sit
the
and
back
spin.
tires.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd never be without some sort of all-wheel drive vehicle in these parts.
Oh
Just
no.
just
No,
wouldn't
no.
do it.
No, I remember
So,
seeing a thing about people who were in Buffalo and saying they have a winter car that's like an
mhm.
old junker.
Yeah, we call them a winter beater.
Yeah. And yeah, and that you're like, oh yeah, they're gonna put salt on it. This car's gonna get beat up. It's gonna get rusted out. Just get it. And then they have their good car, which they leave in the garage or they leave
Hmm.
covered
Yep.
for a long time.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, when I was young, I had a Camaro Z28 for the summer, and I had an old little Chevette or something like that for the winter. Um, Anytime I had a decent, like a nice car, I'd always have a winter beater, just because I didn't want to. Well, you couldn't drive a car like a. I had a Camaro. I had a Monte Carlo SS one time
Hmm.
that I did drive in the winter, but it had a little more weight to it. But
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't have done that. But I only had it a couple of years anyway. But
Well,
yeah,
also
I
there
just
rear-wheel drive cars just don't do well in snow.
no.
There's a huge difference between pulling and pushing.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Dwight, you must have, did you, when you spent time in Port Huron, was there ever a time you spent the winter in there?
I would never go there in the winter. Oh, actually, I did go in the winter one time. I
Oh,
had
you
a
did?
meeting in Muskegon, and I had to, and some dear family friends were on the other side, and I drove across across the state, trying not to hit deer carcasses or
Mm,
Live
hitting
deer
deer
probably.
crossing.
yeah.
But yeah, that I mean, I'm a fish out of the water and that stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do remember we lived by 8 Mile once, and I remember my mom
Hmm.
was walking ahead of me, and I was buried in the snow. I couldn't take steps, and I was crying, and she's saying, "Come on," and this and that, and I was done.
Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
honestly, that's why my dad really moved out to California.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like I said, he was a bus driver in Pittsburgh, and he hated driving in the snow here.
yeah.
Yeah.
But snow, hills, narrow streets. And then when he moved out there, he was driving for Orange County. Power steering, power brakes, which he didn't have here at the time.
Orange County,
AC.
California.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You'd
And
have, you'd have air conditioning.
well, yeah, it was flat. The roads were wide and straight. It was just so much easier for him to drive out there than it was back here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, around here, if you don't have a four-wheel drive, you should have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And the frost lifts things, right? It could break a water main.
Mm-hmm.
There's one of the main roads not too far from my place here where they've had two different water main breaks. So of course they have to dig a hole, you know, basically a lane wide to get down to the where the break is, fix it, and then fill it back in and repatch it. And of course it's always rough until spring when they can actually put a nice um, smooth layer of pavement on it. But it's the frost will lift parts of the road. In my backyard, it lifts my. I've got these like field stones that make a path back to my shed, and just outside the door of the garage, they're lifted up. I can't even open the door all the way because the frost has lifted them. Like it's just crazy, you know. Winters in Canada. So
I heard someone talk about this. I'm gonna copy and send you guys this as a in the group here. But when you were mentioning about the water mains, there
mhm.
was a water main break that happened in
Oh, in
January.
Detroit.
No, no, no. Here.
Oh,
It
really?
was in Pittsburgh, yeah. And this was like late January, so around a month ago. And then it froze. So, oh yeah, no, I saw in Detroit where Lake Michigan kind of goes over and then freezes, and the cars are like encased in ice.
No, I thought there was a water main though break
Oh,
in
okay.
Detroit that did
There
the
might
same
have been.
thing.
Yeah, but here it's bad because it took them 2 days. It took them a while to find the source so they
Yeah.
could turn it off, and some cars were buried in ice up to their rims.
Yeah. Oh,
And this was all on a steep hill. Well, Pittsburgh steep hill. It was all on a steep hill, so you had to wait for that to take off, but you couldn't even probably walk out because you're walking on a hill going down on ice.
wow. Yeah, I'm looking
And
at the thumbnail that you sent. That's
yeah,
crazy.
and Pittsburgh, and it's an old enough city where a lot of the streets were laid out before there were a lot of automobiles.
Mm, yeah.
So it's barely wide enough on a lot of these streets for you can't park on both sides of the street. You can park on one side of the street, and then it's really tight for two-way traffic.
That's kind of like it is in some of the streets around here. Like that
Yeah.
street that I grew up on, you could park on one side of the street, and then if two cars are coming, one has to wait. And that's in the summertime.
Yeah.
It's not a wide street. So, well, guys, it's been fun. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah.
And anybody that's still sticking around on YouTube, thanks for hanging out. If when I'm editing this, if some of this conversation that we just had here turns out to be interesting enough, I might just add it on to the end of the podcast. But just before we go, Todd says, "What apps are you using besides Superimpose?" I guess that'll be to you, Dwight.
It is a super long list. That's a tough one to answer, Todd. I think I'll have to cover that when I do, maybe my workflow. I can actually show the apps and maybe what they do. But I would say the primary two would be Superimpose X and iColorama.
And that one that you showed tonight, the screenshots from that, what was that one? Was that
Superimpose X.
that was Superimpose
That's
X?
where I do my layering. Yeah.
Okay. Do you use Procreate much at all, or?
I'm starting to use more of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones out there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I guess we'll call it a night. And yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate all the conversation. And I guess we'll stop the recording of the audio here.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and we'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time will be the new start time for the live broadcast on YouTube. Alrighty. Take care, everyone.